nutshell. And this is from here to there. Because the distance from here to there in human experience is closer than you think. In this episode, we're talking with Heather Lopez, my best friend who was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2015. You might be surprised to hear what the hardest part of the entire journey was for her. And we want to share that with you, and if you find it relevant to share on social media, please do, because we don't want anybody else to be in the situation that she was in, asking, why didn't anybody tell me this? Why is this subject still so taboo? This is the breast cancer episode, but I promise a lot of the information you're going to hear today is brand new. It's stuff that you haven't heard before. So let's just hit the ground running. Here we go. First of all, tell us how you're doing now with your health.
I am cancer-free, whoop, whoop, and I am healing from my last surgery, which was January 6th. I had a tram flap done. Now looking back, I'm kind of wondering why I did that. A tram flap is basically when they take fat from your stomach and move it to your breast tissue. If you have complications or if you're unable to hold an implant or have the space or tissue for an implant, that's like the last final option that you would have other than nothing in a prosthetic or prosthesis.
That's exactly what happened with you on one side, right?
Yeah, on one side it rejected the implant twice. And so my last option for any kind of breast was the tram flap. It was a pretty extensive surgery. I had complications with that surgery as well. And now I'm about, 4 months out and feeling pretty good. Here's one thing that I will state that the doctors do not talk about. It's the after effects. What kind of long-term side effects will I have from the chemo, from the surgeries, from the radiation? That's not really something that they touch on unless you specifically ask. And even when you specifically ask, I feel they're not as upfront about the information as they should be. For instance, I did not know that the breast cancer center that I go to has a whole facility for women to get anything from massages to acupuncture to free bras, free prosthesis when you're going through a change like I went through. My doctors did not tell me that. They didn't really tell me, you could get a prosthesis for your in-between stage. I feel like those are questions to ask your doctor if you're ever going through something like this, because I didn't know to ask. I just kind of went along with whatever they were telling me. And so for a long period of time, I was like uni boob and didn't do anything about it because I didn't know that I could do something about it. And when I finally was able to get the prosthesis and the bra, I was like, man, I feel like a woman. Woo, woo.
But if you would have worn a bathing suit, would you have seen it?
Oh yeah, it was like a uni boob. This side was there and this side was flat.
I mean the prosthesis.
No, actually they're very natural. They even have a little nipple. So I was like, what? They feel very natural. It was actually kind of cool. And that's why I second guessed myself about getting the tram flap, because honestly, I could have stuck with the prosthetic forever and been fine. I can totally understand why women choose to forego any breast at all or any reconstruction and just go flat, because the reconstruction has been the hell, not the cancer or the chemo or the radiation, the reconstruction.
You're saying now that like you could have seen just having one breast or maybe having none at all, but how would that have made you feel?
I didn't realize how much it affected me emotionally until I went and got sized for the bra and the prosthesis, and how I felt after that was done, like wearing clothes and just feeling like normal again. I didn't realize until that point how it was affecting me emotionally. Self-esteem issues for sure, the whole process. I mean, you gain weight, you have scars. I have scars all over my body. I'm like scar titty. I don't know what you call that. Not scar face, scar chest. Scar chest. So definitely, I mean, thankfully I have a husband who adores me no matter what. But a lot of men leave their wives and girlfriends because they don't want to deal with stuff like this. Aside from appearance, just because it's too much for them.
So nobody told you about the boobs are one thing, but now you're having some side effects below the belt. Why?
So your vagina turns into a Sahara desert. Why does that happen? For me, I mean, every cancer is different, but for me, it's because my cancer was 100% estrogen receptive, which means my estrogen that my body was producing was feeding the cancer. So my body was trying to kill me. So they put me on hormone blockers. So I take a pill every night, and I have to do that for 5 years. And I get injections every month that I have to do for 5 years to suppress the estrogen from developing in my body at all, because that can feed the cancer cells. So that alone put me into what they call medically induced menopause. So at the ripe age of 32, I started experiencing all the fun things that a 50-year-old woman or older experiences. And that includes extreme hot flashes, mood swings, irritability, sleeplessness, dry vagina, uncomfortable intercourse, all those fun, yummy things that not a lot of people want to talk about.
Is it 5 years and then it's over? Or is this the rest of your life?
From what they tell me, it's 5 years, and then at some point my body will go back into its normal stages. So I will get my menstrual cycle again at some point, and all of my normal functioning my body's normal functioning will go back to normal. But I don't know if I will choose that option, to be quite honest. I will probably choose the option to get another surgery and be menopausal now and forevermore, just because of my increased risk of ovarian cancer.
And you mean hysterectomy?
A total hysterectomy, yep. Okay. I'm not having any more babies. My tubes are tied. In my opinion, the only area of my body I can control are my ovaries. And if I don't need them, if I can not worry, 10 years from now about getting ovarian cancer, to me, it's worth it.
Why would people choose not to go that route?
I think it depends on what type of cancer. I think it depends on how young you are. Like maybe someone who's 20 or younger probably shouldn't go that route because they're still extremely young. I think if you have medical conditions in your family, like heart disease or bone density issues, maybe you wouldn't want to go that route because you're putting yourself at risk for those kind of problems sooner rather than later when they would naturally occur. I went through chemo I started in June and I finished in June, July, August, September, October. I finished in November. So I did 5-6 months of chemo. I did 2 separate rounds. I did one that was very strong, and that was like 6 weeks, I think, or 8 weeks every other week. And then I did one that was for 12 weeks straight. The 6-week one was more intense. Honestly, felt nauseous the whole time. I just felt better on the second round of chemo than on the first.
What helped get you through the chemo?
I would say it was a combination of eating, even though I didn't want to eat, taking all my medicines as prescribed, and the help I received and the love I received from everybody, just the support. And you can be the most stubborn person, and believe me, it was really hard for me to accept help from people. It really was. But once I relinquished that control and I had people allowed them to help me, I really missed it when it was gone. The chemo, that was easy. The radiation, no big deal. But the reconstruction is like, what the hell was I thinking? Watching my kids not understand it when I first told them was hard. I think a part of me handled it as I always do in life, and put on a bravado and didn't allow myself to be scared or weak in front of them, especially. But once we got over that initial hump, I guess, of the first surgery and me losing my hair, the kids it just became a different routine. More hand washing, more family time, more talking about our emotions. It brought us closer in a way that I don't think anything else could. And then with my husband, it was really hard to watch him handle everything, like, and his overwhelm. Like, it was hard for me to sit back and like kind of be helpless.
For a woman who's like 30 and she's facing this exact same diagnosis, what would you tell her, if she's about to do everything you already did?
What I would tell someone who's walking the same path is to ask questions. When you consult with your doctor, get second opinions for sure, and ask those questions. Take a notepad with you and write everything down and ask every single question that you have. Keep your faith, stay positive, try to focus on the end game, not so much on how miserable you feel or everything that you're going to go through. Take it one step at a time. You are stronger than you think, and you can get through it. Stay positive, stay focused, stay determined, keep your faith, whatever you need to do, spirituality, religion, friends, family, just deep dive into whatever keeps you focused on the positive and on being optimistic. I have a website called The Chronic Optimist. That's pretty much me in a nutshell. I try to stay positive and focused throughout life because the alternative just doesn't work for me. I am not the kind of person who can just wallow in self-pity for too long. If you want to check it out, please do. It's thechronicoptimist.com. And I talk a little bit about my journey with breast cancer, but I also talk a lot about just being a mom and just life in general. I'm working on my first book, and once that gets released, I will dive more into my personal situations that I've been in life.
People can follow you on Twitter, on Instagram, anywhere else, and what are your handles?
They can follow me on Facebook, facebook.com, The Chronic Optimist.
Is everything the Chronic Optimist, basically?
Not Twitter. Twitter is at The Chronic Optum because Optimist was already taken. And then Instagram is The Chronic Optimist blog. So
Okay.
Any of those, say hi.
After talking to Heather, I called up my childhood friend Melissa Antipolo, who's now an oncology nurse at the Stanford Outpatient Center, to see what she had to say about working with cancer patients. I'm just going to turn it over to you, Melissa, and you tell us what your experience has been with people who have been in a situation like Heather, who was diagnosed at 31 and stage 2, not a death sentence, has gotten through all of the treatment and the reconstructive surgery, and now she's going to have to deal with some stuff for the rest of her life. So what is your experience with, what is the unexpected if someone were to be in that position and diagnosed today?
So I see patients come in that exactly what you just described. They are leading their normal, healthy lives, and then they get a call and they find out that their lives are completely changed because of a diagnosis like breast cancer. From the beginning, it's such a shocking experience for the patient and the family member. So it's a disease that affects everybody. And so my role is to introduce the patient and their family to all of the treatment that they'll be getting, specifically chemotherapy. So a lot of the things that we have to go over in the beginning are how they're going to feel, symptom management, the changes that are going to happen physically, emotionally, mentally. I try to stay with specific patients throughout their course of treatment. That way we establish a good rapport. For everybody, it's a little bit of a different journey. Some patients are more willing to open up and share. Others are extremely withdrawn and just trying to get through the process. The issues that patients face afterwards, after the diagnosis and once they're getting the treatment, the changes to their self-esteem and just feeling like their body has betrayed them. I think that's probably the most shocking part of it all, because they tell you what to expect physically, but I don't feel like there's a really strong emphasis on emotional changes that are going through during and after chemotherapy. It's especially with younger patients that have so many plans in their lives, and then all of a sudden they kind of have to take a pause and get their lives back together. And we do have outreach programs for like a survivorship, so life after cancer treatment. We see a wide range of people affected from this. I've seen, as the youngest, one of the younger patients I've seen is like 20 years old.
And what do they say to somebody who's 20? Do they like try to keep them, like, since a lot of these cancers are estrogen driven, are they advised to not try to get pregnant? Like how does that work?
So generally they do some planning beforehand, before chemotherapy. They open up the conversation about reproduction afterwards. So it's really like a case-by-case scenario. Some are allowed to have children, others are, depending on what their cancer is.
Walk me through your day.
So when I start my shift at 7 or 7:30 in the morning, I get a list of patients that I'll see during my 12-hour shift. And that's usually about 5 to 6 patients. It ranges from either a quick injection or sometimes a 6-hour therapy that they're with me. And I will see the patient, assess the patient, read about what's going on with them, what their treatment is for the day, and then give them their treatment.
You've been doing this for how many years now?
So it will be 6 years.
What has this experience been like for you?
It truly is a privilege to take care of people at their most vulnerable, and it's provided me a different perspective on how to live my life, and the advice that you get from somebody that is faced with their own mortality is something that I'm sure you could probably read in a book, but to have that moment where you're connecting with somebody, it's just something I'll always have with me. And being an oncology nurse, it's a job, yeah, but it's like a calling for me, and I really enjoy what I do.
So you never feel compassion fatigue?
Oh yes, that's a very real thing. I definitely experienced that, and it's been helpful that my schedule is switched to 3/12s, because in my downtime, then I'm able to focus on self-care, and which is so essential.
For caretakers and for people who are getting the diagnosis, what are some self-care like pieces of advice that you would have for them that they, might not be thinking of?
It's just as simple as remembering to breathe. Just because you're getting thrown all this information, and just take a few moments to just focus on your breath and just remember that you'll get through this, but it's just one step at a time.
Melissa, I could not agree more. We have to put one foot in front of the other and keep moving forward.